The famed World Trade Center climber, George Willig, found the ride excellent. I wasn't apprehensive because I knew it would be all over quickly. It wasn't a climb when I was hanging off the side of that building with plenty of time to think about what I was doing. On a ride like this, all you can do is react emotionally, and then it's all done. On March 2, 1978, Busch Gardens officials opened their gates to the media to set their eyes on their brand new signature ride, Loch Ness Monster. Fred Guyton, an architect who helped design Busch Gardens and the Loch Ness Monster, said there had been about 1,300 roller coasters built in the US, but there had never been quite anything like this. Loch Ness Monster had been built in secret, not revealing too much to park guests or the media, hoping to surprise them once they opened for the season on March 25th. They would walk into the gardens and lay their eyes upon a 130-foot tall, 3,240-foot long, 70-mile-an-hour beast. General Manager John B. Roberts said it would have the tallest, fastest, and steepest drop in the world, the only ride with interlocking loops, and part of the ride would be in total darkness, a hollowed-out mountain called the Monster's Lair. It will be the most awesome, terrible, frightening thrill ride in history. For the ride's grand opening in June, Roberts lined up a group of NFL players, including Mean Joe Green, NHL players, race car drivers, a stunt woman, and the man who scaled the World Trade Center to take the first ride, including a 90-year-old man. Roberts said he wanted a collection of people who would represent the courage it takes for everyone to ride it. It's 2 minutes and 10 seconds of absolute mayhem on a Scream Seeker's dream machine, the most insidiously conceived contraption of its kind on or under this earth. On June 2nd, the monster was open to the public. At 10:30 a.m., 300 people were lined up and ready to run to one of the great coasters in the world. One security guard even saying he thought they'd be trampled when they came through. Once the celebrities had their inaugural rides, including Virginia Governor John Dalton and August Busch, the crowd surged to the monster and came off with rave reviews. 2 weeks after opening, the park invited Alex Campbell to the park to christen Loch Ness Monster, sprinkling water from the actual Loch Ness onto the lead car of the coaster. The Scotland native claimed to have seen the actual monster 18 times over the course of 45 years, and he said he hoped the coaster would endure as long as the monster has over the years. Loch Ness Monster was a sensation, and that helped the park hit the 1 million guest mark in late July, the earliest they were able to achieve that since opening year. Later that month, the park was forced to close its gates for the first time in its history, 30,000 people having poured into the park and having no more parking spots. The park was flying high, and so was General Manager John B. Roberts, being promoted to Busch Gardens Division Director of Operations and moving to St. Louis, replaced by Patrick D. Cartwright, serving as Operations Manager since the park opened. For those who weren't into death-defying new thrill coasters, Mark Wilson debuted the new half-hour magic show in the Globe Theater, and Frankie Avalon headlined their fall entertainment schedule, performing in the Three Musketeers Theater. This included Disco Date Night, the park being open till midnight for a disco dance party. The park set a new attendance record, 2,171,290 people crossing the turnstiles, and Loch Ness Monster serving 1,461,709 riders in its opening year. The coaster helped the entire Williamsburg area get a lot of free national publicity, helping tourism beyond the old country. Admission would increase once again, as it had every year up to this point, from $8 in 1977, $8.75 in 1978, to $9.25 in 1979, despite no major capital expansion plans in the works. Patrick Cartwright cited the inflationary trend in the economy as the reason. Season passes only increased $1, now $26, and by the new year, pass sales were 15% ahead of 1978. Those who came to the old country in 1979 would find a change to the Loch Ness Monster. More specifically, the Monster's Lair. The dark mountain would now have mist and visual and sound effects. There would also be a new show in the Hastings section of England, a Broadway-style musical revue called Kaleidoscope. The Mark Wilson Magic Show was expanded, as was Circus Europa, and they had a long list of musical acts coming over the summer, including The Village People, Chris Christopherson, and Pete Seeger. Opening weekend would also see the Miss USA pageant held at the park, the contestants joining bagpipers and the Clydesdales in the Loch Ness Monster Plaza to open the new season. Busch Gardens was on solid ground, but they had to deal with forces outside of their control. King's Dominion was their direct competitor ever since the park opened, and in 1979 they opened the Lost World, a 17-story mountain that housed 3 new rides, causing speculation that the crowds that flocked to the brand new Loch Ness Monster in 1978 would choose King's Dominion in 1979. There was also another concern about an oil shortage, this one fueled by the Iranian Revolution, but by Memorial Day, park officials didn't seem to be fazed. We're actually doing great. Actually, for the year, we're just astounded how well we're doing. The gas crisis, or whatever it is, hasn't affected us yet. John Hunter, Busch Gardens publicity director. Midsummer, the park introduced the Galactic Laser Show experience at the Three Musketeers Theater and a new bird show called Around the World in 80 Days. This was all leading up to the next big announcement. Site plans started to leak in the late summer of 1979, a multi-million-dollar expansion of the park, and in October, it was official. Busch Gardens would invite a new country into the old country, Italy. Fred Guyton would be back to work on this project, stating it would bridge the time between the Caesars and the 15th century. The rides were said to be inspired by the inventions of Leonardo da Vinci, inventing the first helicopter and the hang glider. The main attractions of the new area would be food, drink, and entertainment. This would follow the trend of major investments every other year: Oktoberfest in 1976, Loch Ness Monster in 1978, and now Italy in 1980. This was good because attendance dipped below the 2 million mark in 1979, ending with 1,920,000. The park losing the novelty of Loch Ness Monster now in its second season, more rain throughout the year, and the gas shortage causing less out-of-town visitors, having to rely more on locals to fill the gap. General manager Patrick Cartwright would leave the company at the end of the season to start his own company, replaced by C. Michael Cross, an outside hire, most recently holding serious positions at the Marriott's Great America Parks. He kicked off the 1979 season with a toast in the Fest House, and although Italy would not be ready till the summer, the concert series started right away, including Chuck Berry, the Dirt Band, and Mel Tillis. A soap opera festival called Soaps Alive coming in May, where many of TV's most popular soap actors would appear on stage. Busch Gardens would also be the star of a new show, a 90-minute TV special called New Country at the Old Country, starring Greg Evigan and Dennis Weaver, giving the park even more publicity, and the Chinese Magic Circus of Taiwan would grace the Three Musketeers Theater. By late June, and $6 million into the project, it was clear that Italy would not open on time, needing to be pushed back 2 weeks, blamed on cold and rainy weather interrupting the pouring of concrete foundations, causing a domino effect for making everything presentable for opening. Finally, by mid-July, Italy was open for business, along with its 3 rides: the battering ram, the flying machine, and the little balloons. Italy was popular, but the live shows drew people in droves. Complaints started to mount about the theaters being too small, winding lines of people trying to get in and most having to be turned away, and sometimes the traffic to get into the park was unmanageable, as was the case when the park had to shut down ahead of Dick Clark's old-time rock and roll revival show. We're aware of the problem, and we're working on ways to ease the situation for next year. The Three Musketeers Theater, where all the concerts are held, seats 3,400 people. Unfortunately, the big-name performers brought in for the concerts can draw 2 to 3 times that many spectators, and often do. Connie Desaulniers, publicity manager. Not surprising, Busch Gardens almost matched our 1978 attendance number, a 12.5% spike over 1979, finishing with 2.16 million. C. Michael Cross worried about the gasoline crisis, recession, and inflation coming in, and was pleased with the park's performance. The price of admission would rise another $1.05 going into 1981, now $11 per person, citing higher operating costs, a higher minimum wage, and general inflation. But there was a much greater spike in season pass prices, going from $30 to $40. They also hoped to raise money by selling corporate sponsorships inside the park, as signs for Gwaltney, Beatrice Foods, 3M, Marva Mice, and Coca-Cola would pop up around the park, and their products would be sold inside the park. Many of the same performers would return in 1981. Johnny Cash making an appearance this year, as did Harry Chapin, performing in April before dying in a car crash in July. The 2 big new attractions would be live stage shows: Kaleidoscope 2, a 45-minute trip through American music, accompanied by lasers and smoke, and The People's Choice, a 30-minute interactive show where the audience could vote to determine the outcome. Park guests craved these shows, as the Oak Ridge Boys helped the park smash their attendance records in August, having to add more shows to accommodate everyone. Over 9,000 people in total, and more than ever, this proved that live entertainment was just as valuable as new sections of the park and new rides. Even with a mid-season ticket price hike of 95 cents, 2,102,467 people crossed the turnstiles in 1981, right on the park's projected target. Guests would have to pay $12.50 to enter the park in 1982, or $45 to enter all season, despite no new major attractions. C. Michael Cross addressed the pattern of receiving a multi-million-dollar attraction every other year, implying that may be a thing of the past. I think you have to put this park in perspective. It's our 8th season. During the early years and up until about 3 years ago, the park expanded really rapidly, with major expansion occurring every other year to increase the capacity of the park, which was not adequate. He mentioned that attendance had leveled off over the last 3 years. The construction of Italy rounded out the basic pattern of the park, and completed the basic needs of the park as we saw in terms of square footage in relation to our attendance. The park would focus on improving the basic park product, upgrading shops, restaurants, graphics, and would eventually receive major expansions. There was just no set timetable for that. The 1982 season would kick off with an appearance from King Henry VIII in the English section of the park, opening with a spring festival and a maypole dance in front of the Globe Theatre. Mark Wilson would have a new magic show, The World's Greatest Illusion, and France would have a new unicycle act and a team of acrobats, the Volantes and Dingbats, respectively. True to their word, Busch Gardens introduced a new system to cut the wait times to get into their concerts, from hours to about 15 minutes. Tickets for the shows would now be available in the morning and afternoon for park guests to pick up on a first-come, first-served basis, reserving their spot without having to get in line for hours before the show. It wasn't just the lines inside the park that needed to be addressed, it was the lack of parking spaces that caused the park to have to close its gates. In the summer of 1982, Busch Gardens launched a $6 to $7 million expansion of their parking lot, removing some of the wooded areas between their existing lots and consolidating them, a project that would also move the park entrance further east. This came alongside news that a water park was in the works to be built near Busch Gardens, a $19.5 million project spearheaded by former general manager Patrick Cartwright, as York County was looking to expedite approval of the project. Attendance struggled in 1982, down 12% in the summer, as the park tried to remedy that by offering discounts after 5 p.m. and offering a promotion that allowed guests to ride Loch Ness Monster without getting off. Still, they failed to crack their goal of the 2 million mark, finishing at 1,918,656, an 8.7% drop, mainly blamed on weather, the bad economy, and the World's Fair in Knoxville drawing tourists away. Still, park officials were optimistic for 1983, investing $3 million to expand the Three Musketeers Theater to seat 5,000, nearly double its original capacity, making the stage larger and removing the moat between the stage and the audience. It would be renamed the Royal Palace Theater. They would also produce a new indoor stage show called Hats Off to Hollywood, a 46-minute show paying tribute to fantasy films such as The Wizard of Oz and Mary Poppins, and opened 2 new rides in the Da Vinci Garden of Invention section of Italy, one being a thrill ride described as a parallel Ferris wheel that lifts you up and over in a 360-degree roll, known as Da Vinci's Cradle, and a ride for kids described as a modified hang glider, taking the place of the little balloons which would be relocated inside the park. A new picnic area would be open for large groups to reserve, the Black Forest Picnic Village being right next to Das Festhaus. Concerts would no longer be included with the price of admission, having to fork over $2 to $4 to see a show in the newly renovated theater, season pass holders getting a discount. This went along with a new daily admission price of $13.50, up $1 from the prior year. Guests would enjoy an extra 1,000 parking spots, bringing the total number to 6,500. The 1983 season kicked off with a bang, the Statlers and Ray Charles being the headline musical acts, the park handing out cake and buttons to the first 1,500 people who rode Loch Ness Monster on his 5th birthday. Then, over the summer, they offered 2 weekends of free concerts to all park guests at the Royal Palace Theatre, ending the season with a concert from the Australian duo known as Air Supply, and another soap opera festival. Attendance rose 2% over 1982, still just shy of 2 million, enjoying the benefits from the new rides and not being hurt by their new policy to charge for their concerts. Still, after the park closed for the season, Busch Gardens fired 48 employees, about a quarter of the full-time staff, described as an overall program to improve operating efficiency. C. Michael Cross hoped to control operating costs to keep admission prices down, and was something seen across all major parks around the country as the theme park industry matured. There were also concerns about the industry as a whole. The boom of new parks that had occurred in the early to mid-70s had all but stopped, with the exception of Disney World's Epcot. Rising gas prices and the economic recession hurting the tourism industry, and being cost-efficient was the new strategy being employed across the country. Regardless of what happened in 1983, park officials knew they had an ace up their sleeve for 1984. By the summer, vague details started to emerge of a major new ride that would start construction that fall. All that was known at the time was that it would be on a 5-acre site behind Oktoberfest. It would take the place of Die Wilkatze. It would have a footprint at least the size of Loch Ness Monster, and it would be a design unique to Busch Gardens. In fact, the official line from the park was, "This will be different from anything in any theme park." Thanks for watching episode 2 of the 6-part documentary. If you could drop a like and share this video with anyone who may be interested, I would really appreciate it. This is a massive project and I appreciate the support. I want to thank my Patreons. If you want bonus access, bonus content, and have your name listed at the end of each video, check my links below and join. Stay tuned next week for episode 3, as the innovative Big Bad Wolf brings Busch Gardens to the next level.